In case of learning second language acquisition, in the first two classes we have learned that second language acquisition has come in this stage. That means in the time when I were learning and teaching second language, it has come through a long process. Many researchers, many linguists, many anthropologists, many psychologists have researched on this second language acquisition. How and in which way language learning could be more and more effective. And it needs no telling that we are in a necessity that we have to learn second language. Okay? And for this reason, that means the human sciences will always try to catch or try to research the situation that is needed for you. Language learning and language acquisition is needed for us, and for this reason, many researchers investigated the situation. They have said that language learning is a matter of habits. Okay. And among them, in the second half of the 19th century, exactly the year is 1920 to first half of the second century, that is American psychologist J.B. Watson. He said that actually language learning, second language acquisition is a form of habit. Next time we see that the Russian psychologist Pavlov in 1924, he has talked about and supported the issue. So in this regard, we can say that language learning is a form of habit. That idea was originated by J.B. Watson, an American psychologist. So next time, that idea was supported by Pavlov in 1924. Pavlov is a Russian psychologist. That I have said, that is, language acquisition is not an isolated phenomenon nowadays. Many questions research in many ways. And now we are getting, you may ask that, sir, in the language class while you are talking about psychologists. Yes, this psychologist, Pavlov, Russian psychologist, he said that, yes, language learning or acquisition is a form of habit. And he is there. So Pavlov, Russian psychologist, also said that it is a form of habit. But good, thank you. J.B. Watson, American psychologist, he originated the idea that is language learning or language acquisition is a form of habit. But Russian psychologist, excuse me, Russian psychologist researched on this, Pavlov, and Pavlov, after getting research, he said that yes, language learning is a form of habit, and that habit can be called operant conditioning. And this operant conditioning, Pavlov researched a way. That means everything, classical conditioning and operant conditioning. So Pavlov said that classical conditioning, Pavlov researched with the dog, and it is a famous dog experiment theory in SLA. And American psychologist Skinner in 1957, he also supported this, that is, language learning is a form of habit, and he talked about operant conditioning. Okay. And Skinner also researched second language acquisition through an investigation, and his investigation is called rat research. Okay. So we will be discussing this, and simultaneously we will see he talked about the operant conditioning. Okay, so more or less they said that second language acquisition is a form of habit, and this habit formation, that means language learning is a form of habit. That theory can be called behaviorist theory of second language acquisition. And who are the originator of this theory? American psychologist J.B. Watson, and next time they were supported by one Russian psychologist, Pavlov, and second time American psychologist J.B. Skinner. Okay. So up to the end of the 1960s, the views of language learning was derived from a theory of learning in general. That means before the theory invented by Pavlov and Skinner, language learning was determined in a general way. That means grammar, translation method, or some other methods. But after 1950 decades, second language acquisition were investigated in several ways, especially the psychology, anthropology, and other field of human sciences were included in second language acquisition. So they say so. And in this regard, they say, this dominant psychological school, they say the key notions can be identified in this discussion, that is habits and errors. So behaviorist theory of language learning based on, that is, we learn language based on our habits, or we may learn language based on our errors. Okay. So these two issues will be there. And when we will move forward, what that means habit, how habit is related to language learning. Okay. Language learner actually responds towards a stimulus or stimuli. Stimuli the plural and stimulus the singular. And different stimuli produces different responses from a learner. What are the stimuli? This response could be haphazard, since they couldn't be predicted, or they could be regular. What is stimuli, and in which way it is related to language learning? That is totally presented by Pavlov's dog theory. Here you see that a dog is tied over there, and you can see there is the observation spring and the tube for collection of saliva. Saliva means lala. And container of meat powder. That means dog likes this food. That means the container meat powder. And here you see, that means the revolving drum for recording responses, and device to count drops of saliva. Whenever you will be putting some meat before a dog will salivate. It is natural. Okay. And in this investigation, Pavlov put some meat powder on that container, and for this reason the dog started to salivate. If we move forward, it is natural, very natural. Here we see that is whenever a light will be there, association. So there is a container, there will be some meat, okay, and food will be there and dog will start salivating, okay. But at the time, if you put another bulb over there, light, okay, no, if we put a light instead of food, so dog will not salivate. কারণ আলো দেখে তো তার মুখে লালা আসবে না, কি আসবে? খাবার আসবে। আমরা দুটোই একসাথে রাখলাম, একটা টাইম আমরা একটা আলো জ্বালালাম এবং আলো জ্বালানোর সাথে সাথেই সেখানে কি দিলাম? খাবার দিলাম, ওকে। তো যখন আলো জ্বলবে তখন ডগ মনে করবে যে এখন আলো জ্বলেছে, এখন খাবার আসছে, সে কি করবে? গ্রাজুয়ালি এক সময় প্রতিদিন first day we put light and food together and getting the indication that whenever light will be on, then I will be getting food and dog will start salivating. Second day, same things, and third day, same things, and fourth day, there is no food, only light. So the dog will salivate. That is called classical conditioning. Now come to language learning. In case of language learning, if we say that yes, good, after language, linguistic data is the main powder. Okay? So linguistic data will be there, and with that something, whenever a student will try to learn, okay, so they are getting the linguistic data, and simultaneously they will get one kind of inspiration. You are producing good English, that's good. He is silent. Oh, you are thinking that you want to learn language very well. So that is one way I am stimulating his behavior. But he remains silent. Okay. So, and also someone is speaking, that means he is extrovert. He is asking so many questions. So I can say, good job. You can asking so many relevant questions regarding the same language learning. So the stimulation, the inspiration, and also the linguistic data are the meat powder in case of Pavlov's dog theory. Whenever you will be getting inspired by such kind of stimulus or stimuli, then 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 4th day, and after 1 week, you will naturally start producing language. And such kind of conditioning is called Pavlov's classical conditioning. So that is Pavlov's theory. That means after a few time, your language learning phenomena will be a part of your habit or behavior. So what is the habit or behavior? That whenever something will be happening to me, that every time I can touch my head. So after 5 days, subconsciously I will be putting my hand on my head. So after some months or weeks, a habit will be subconscious to me. I am not conscious, but I am putting my hand on my nose or forehead or something else. In the same way, when language learning situation will get inspired by teacher's job or instructor's job or your fellow mates, then this language learning will be a habit of you and you will be learning language. That is Pavlov's theory of classical. Okay, and there is a definition over there, that classical conditioning, otherwise known as Pavlov's conditioning, when an organism forms a simple association between two previously unrelated stimuli. One of the stimuli is important to the organism and is called an unconditioned stimulus, and the other stimulus is a conditioned stimulus. So the bulb light was unconditioned stimulus, and conditioned stimulus, that is the meat powder for the. Okay. So whenever you will be inspired, when you will be getting stimuli, then language learning will be your habit, and gradually you will be producing language. So that is the classical conditioning. Operant conditioning. A different conditioning is done by Skinner. And he has talked about this theory, that is rats theory. Okay, so you see that is speaker, signal light, lever, pallet, dispenser tube, food cup, electric grid, and TESOL generator. Okay, here you see that once upon a time a dog is put in this container, in this box. So the rat was put in this box. A boxের এক সাইডে একটা লিভার এবং এমনিতেই ইঁদুরটা দৌড়াদৌড়ি করতে করতে ওই লিভারের গায়ে একটা ধাক্কা লেগেছে। যখন ধাক্কা লেগেছে তখন সেখানে একটা প্রেস করেছে, তখন প্রেস করার সাথে সাথে ওই যে কন্টেইনার ছিল ওখান থেকে কন্টেইনার থেকে একটা শস্য দানা টিউবের মধ্য দিয়ে ভিতরে চলে এসেছে। সো দ্যাট ইজ যখন সে এটা চাপ দিয়েছে, তো তখন সে কি বুঝলো, সে আর ইচ্ছা করে দেখে এমনিতে কেন, তখন সে করবে কি ওই জায়গায় হচ্ছে ও আস্তে আস্তে আবার ওখানে কি করবে, চাপ দেবে এবং সে হচ্ছে যেখানে চাপ দিলে কি পাওয়া যায় এবং সে চাপ দেবে এবং সেটা তার একটা প্রথমবার সেটা ছিল তার অনিচ্ছাকৃত, বাট নেক্সট টাইম যখন সে বুঝবে যে এখানে একটা চাপ দিলেই খাবার পাওয়া যায়, তখন সে নেক্সট টাইম ওটা তার হ্যাবিটে পরিণত হবে and you will be getting food and this is the way. Okay, that is and একটা ইলেকট্রিক গ্রিড আছে, লাল লাইট। যদি সে ইলেকট্রিক গ্রিডে যদি সে কোনোভাবে পা দেয় বা কোনো কিছু টাচ করে, তাহলে সে এক প্রকারের কি পাবে, শক পাবে। ওকে, তো লিভারে সে যখন চাপ দিচ্ছে তখন সে কি পাচ্ছে, ফুল, আর ইলেকট্রিক গিয়ারে চাপ দিলে সে কি পাচ্ছে, এক প্রকারের শক পাচ্ছে। ওকে, সো the electric shock refers to the negative stimulus and the lever will be the positive. If your instructor and teacher say, oh good, thousands time you can do good. Okay, at a glass ভেঙেছে তুই বলে good, টিভি ভেঙেছে very good, খাতা নষ্ট করেছে বাচ্চারা very good. Okay, so all good এক সময় দেখবে যে অটোমেটিক্যালি হচ্ছে, সে কি হচ্ছে, কিন্তু দেখা গেল যে একটা গ্লাস ভাঙছে, একটা ঠাস করে থাপ্পড় মেরে, এটা হলো নেগেটিভ স্টিমুলাস। তখন যেটা হবে কি, তখন সে ওর মনের মধ্যে একটা সাইকোলজিক্যালি একটা নেগেটিভ ইফেক্ট তৈরি হয়ে আগের বার সে অবচেতন মনেই ভাঙছিল, ঠিক আছে, এখন তো সে জানে সে ভাঙলে গ্লাস থাপ্পড় খাবে, ঠিক আছে, এখন দেখা যাচ্ছে ও আর কেয়ারলেস, ও এমনিতেই। ওকে, সো ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ লার্নিং will in such a way it will be, if a language learner gets negative inspiration, then the language learning will stop and will not try. But when it will be get positive inspiration, then it will try. The language learner will try to achieve that. That's like the rat. That means it will try to press the lever and try to get the food. Okay, and such kind of condition is called operant conditioning. And who is the originator of this behaviourist theory? That is the American psychologist. So basically, language learning acquisition, according to these three psychologists, that is, it is a form of habit. The habit formation will be formed for the cause of, here you see, rewards introduced to increase our behavior. When you will be getting reward, your behavior will be increased, and this reward might be behavior, this reward might be a chocolate. Okay, আমার ছোট মেয়ে কিছুই লিখতে পারে না, ঠিক আছে, কিন্তু ওর মিসি সব লিখে দিয়েছে। তো আমি বললাম যে তুমি পরীক্ষায় ফার্স্ট হয়েছো এবং মিস একটা চকলেট দিয়েছে, তো বলছে আমি পরীক্ষায় ফার্স্ট হয়েছি জন্য চকলেট দিয়েছি, দ্যাট ইজ দ্য রিওয়ার্ড। ওকে, কিন্তু সে ও বেশি পারে, যখন সে রিওয়ার্ড পজিটিভ হবে তখন তার মধ্যে কি হবে, increase behavior, and when punishment introduced to decrease behavior. So the common sense or common ability will decrease when a language learner will be treated negatively or will be discouraged by parents. তোমাদের কিচ্ছু হবে না, তোমাদের বয়সে আমরা কত করেছি, গোল্ডেন সার্টিফিকেট পেয়েছি, কি করেছি শিখেছি। সো ইন দিস রিগার্ড আই সে এখন বাচ্চারা যখন পরীক্ষা দেয় তার থেকে গার্ডিয়ানরা বেশি। নার্সারির বাচ্চা আমার মেয়ে ফার্স্ট হয়েছে, থার্ড হয়েছে, হয়েছে, কম্পিটিশন। এখন কি করে তারা নিজের স্বপ্ন নিজে ফার্স্ট হতে পারে না, এই জন্য স্বপ্নটা চাপিয়ে দেয়। So don't put your dreams, আমি তাদের জন্য বলি। So in such a way, language learning, actually language learning acquisition in the first class we have defined. That means language learning is not learning anymore, it is acquisition. That means if we could focus in the way a child learns a language, so in case of second language acquisition, that means we will be following the children's way to learn the language, and for this reason psychology is involved in second language acquisition. So punishment will decrease the behavior and reward will increase our behavior, and specific consequences are associated with the voluntary behavior. Okay, that is operant conditioning. Whenever that means operant conditioning, that means if the stimulus is negative, that will operate the decrease of a behavior. If the stimulus is positive, that will increase, that is operate the good behavior of the learners. So it is called operant conditioning by Skinner. So these are about habits and the association of a particular response with a particular stimulus constituted a habit. Okay. Whenever you will be getting stimulated, then naturally habit will form to you. When you will be rewarded, a habit will form on you. Okay. When you will not be rewarded, the habit, that is also a habit. That means you will lose your interest and you will not try to learn or try to utilize your ability to achieve your objectives. And it was this type of regular behavior and that psychologists such as Watson and Skinner set out to investigate with the rats theory. Okay, and a habit was formed when a particular stimulus became regularly linked with a particular response, and there was various theories about how this association could take place. In the classical behaviorism of Watson, the stimulus was said to elicit the response. Okay, so Watson said that particular response will increase your behavior, and that is the response of the stimulus called forth a response. Okay. And if the stimulus occurred sufficiently frequently, the response became practiced and therefore automatic. So if you tell 20 times a day good job to a child, then the child will try to do threefold or fourfold ways. And when the child will try to do that thing in threefold or fourfold ways, then that behavior will be automatic. And after some days, without stimulus, without your word that good job, the child is doing that behavior. Okay. That is in case of language learning. In the neo-behaviorism of Skinner, a rather different account of how habit developed can be found. Skinner played down the importance of the stimulus on the grounds, and it was not always possible to state that what stimulus was responsible for a particular response. Okay, so the theories of habit formation were theories of learning in general, and they could be and were applied to language learning. In L1 acquisition, children were said to master their mother tongue, and by imitating utterance produced by adults and having their efforts at using language either rewarded or corrected. Okay, so reward can have, and also he can be corrected. The children can be corrected by the parents or the adults. Okay, so sometimes children cannot produce a specific word. In this regard, the adult will try to correct the learners, and in such a way they will get correction, and one day they will produce correct and good English. In this way, children were supposed to build up our knowledge of pattern and habits that constitute the language, and they were trying to learn. And it was also believed that SLA could proceed in a similar way. Okay. So imitation, reinforcement were the means by which a learner identified the stimulus, response and association that constitute the habits of the L2. Okay. So one of the major attraction was that it proved a theoretical account of how the learner's L2 is introduced into the process of SLA. So if you go back, so what is the habit over there? So you can say that the habit is a tendency or action that someone has settled into. Okay, so if a person settled into a sort of action or behavior, that can be called habit. According to Watson, Skinner and Pavlov, whenever you will try to learn a language, if we get stimulated, then you will try to increase your behavior, and someday that behavior will be a pattern of you, and you will try to produce language, and language learning will be automatic to your behavior, and that is the behaviorist theory of language learning. Did you